Okay. Welcome everyone to today's webinar, Beyond Play-Based Learning. My name is Jamie Lee, and I'm the Education Design Specialist from 100. And I'm really excited that today we are continuing the series of webinars hosted by selected innovators from the Global Collection 2026. So a few housekeeping items. This webinar will be recorded and it will also be sent to you a few days after the webinar. So don't worry if you miss anything, you will definitely get the recording. If you have any questions during the webinar, you can put them in the chat and I will try my best to answer them. But we will also have a Q&A section at the end so we can bring those questions up to our panelists today then. And finally, this webinar offers closed captions and translations, so you can turn those on by clicking Show Captions at the bottom of the screen and then clicking the language that you would like to translate it to. So hopefully that helps. So without further ado, it is with great pleasure that I pass the mic over to our host for today's webinar, Dr. Sarah Ayano, the CEO of Longworth Education and co-author of the P-BLOT framework. Over to you, Sarah.
Kia ora, Jamie. Thank you very much. And hello and kia ora, everyone. Ngā mihi nui from New Zealand. It's lovely to have you joining us. I've just been looking at the chat and seeing all the different places that you're coming in from Mozambique, India, Peru, Cambridge, Vietnam, Wanaka. Lovely to see someone there from New Zealand and Christchurch, Kenya, Kuwait. We've got a truly global audience for this webinar, and it's so exciting to be able to connect with you all. Please make use of the closed captions function that Jamie pointed out, because we have a beautiful panel tonight of New Zealand educators. And I always acknowledge when I'm speaking internationally that New Zealanders can speak fast and we have a strong accent. So if there's anything that you're not sure of what we're saying, make use of those closed captions, and hopefully that's been able to navigate our accent as well. And I'll try and slow down in amongst my enthusiasm for our topic. I'm really, really excited to be able to introduce the panel of educators that I've invited along for this discussion. I'm probably going to say this evening a lot because it is 8:30 in the evening over here, but for your morning if you're in the Northern Hemisphere, because these educators are walking the talk when it comes to having play as a fundamental part of the school day in their school settings. They live and breathe this, and they believe fundamentally in the power of play for learning, and that play is an inherent right that children have in their education experience. So I'm going to introduce panel members to you very briefly, and then what I'm going to do is just do a little bit of an overview of the P-BLOT and the framework, but I'm not going to spend too long on that, simply because you can take a look at that in your own time. I want to give most of the time to the discussion with this amazing group. So we have Marianne Roberts has joined us, and Marianne is the principal of Aranui Primary School in Whanganui. And for those of you that might know New Zealand, that is on the North Island, on the west coast of the North Island. We have James White, who is the principal from Whakamaru School. And Whakamaru School is a rural school for children aged 5 through to age 12, right bang in the centre of the North Island in New Zealand. We have Melanie Dean, who is the principal of Lyell Bay School, and this school is situated in our capital city in Wellington, so a city-based school. And we have Gareth Cunliffe, who is the principal of Otunga Road School. For those who have visited New Zealand, you've probably gone to Rotorua, the stinky city, and that is where Otunga Road School is situated as well. Also joining us is Anne Williams. Anne is a team leader, classroom teacher of junior school students, so our 5 and 6-year-olds here in New Zealand at Northcote Primary School in Auckland, our biggest city, and is an amazing practitioner of play all day, every day in her classroom. And finally, my wonderful colleague, Sue Bewley. Sue is a professional development provider, a facilitator, or has been for Longworth. She's spending time with her grandchildren now. But Sue has done some amazing work coaching some of our principals here, as well as implementing the P-BLOT framework over the last few years around New Zealand. So you're going to hear from all of them as we go through this event. Before we get into the conversation with these educators, what I wanted to do is just give you an overview of why we're here, the purpose and the structure of what we're looking for in this session, and then what the P-BLOT is and the framework for it. And as we go through, our educators are probably going to refer to it quite a bit around how it's being used to support the work that they do. The purpose of this really ultimately is to encourage educators around the world to move from this idea that play is a sort of an add-on, nice to have thing when the real learning's done or when the real work's done at school, to it being fundamentally the process through which children learn all day, every day in an education setting. And one of the things that we know about play, and certainly the research I've been involved in over the last 10 to 15 years around this, is that play is seen as something that we do when the real work's done. And so tonight we want to be able to share with you how we ensure that the real work, the real learning, that rigorous stuff that we want our children, particularly those aged 5 and onwards, so we're talking 5-year-olds through to 12-year-olds, continue to do in their school environment while covering all the requirements of the curriculum and making sure that as educators, we know that good stuff is still happening, but it might look a little bit different from more traditional means of learning. The way that we do that and how we do that with Longworth Education and the work that we do is based on the research that I've been involved in through my doctoral studies, looking at how we support teachers to embed play pedagogy in their school setting while knowing that they're covering everything that they need to be covering and meeting curriculum requirements. The P-BLOT framework started out of the doctoral research. And what happened was that we looked at what supports do teachers need to be able to do this with confidence and with fidelity. And from that, we created a tool that enables us to identify strengths and areas of need that teachers have related to what we know works using play as a pedagogical tool. I'm just going to show you a couple of slides now just to talk through this, but then we'll go into the nitty-gritty of the webinar. So let me just share for a moment. Okay, so we're really excited to share the P-BLOT with you all, and particularly honoured with the global recognition that we've received this year from 100, both in terms of being part of the global collection, but also earlier this year we were recognised as influential in terms of child-centred learning as well, and we featured in the spotlight that 100 focused on with Montessori Global Education around child-centred learning. So we've been endorsed through Montessori Global Education as well. If you are wanting to learn a little bit more about the P-BLOT and go into more depth with it, because I'm not obviously going to do that with you now, very simply you can go onto the website and look at the p-blot.com, and it will show you in more detail all about the P-BLOT. It has a background, how it came to be, and the work that we're doing now globally using the P-BLOT. Before we go into the discussion with the team here, I wanted to give you a little bit of an insight into what Kiwi schools look like and what it looks like for our children to be learning through play all day, every day. And this video, it's only about a minute long, and it just features the wonderful children at St. Patrick's School in Napier in New Zealand. And it hopefully gives you a bit of an insight. These are children that are learning through play. This is not outside of sitting down and doing their lessons. This is part of their school day. What I really want you to focus on is the age of these kids. We've got kids from age 5 going right through to age 12. And a lot of the learning happening both inside and outside the classroom during school time. This is not during a break time or after school. This is while school is scheduled to be happening. Another feature that you'll see that is a feature of New Zealand schools is the school uniform. A lot of other schools won't have uniforms, but in New Zealand a lot of schools do. feature you'll see here as well is the presence of the teachers. This is not a hands-off approach to learning. Teachers are very much engaged alongside children as they play, which is often a confusion when it comes to understanding play as a pedagogical tool. You'll also see little snippets of literacy in there. Literacy and numeracy, direct acts of teaching are also occurring during a play-based classroom. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of a taste of what New Zealand schools look like. And just to share with you that the P-BLOT isn't just isolated to New Zealand. If you have a look on the website, you'll see that we work both in New Zealand, we're working in Australia, in Canada. We also have done work with a school in Nigeria, and in India, we work with a NGO there. And we're also doing a little bit of work in Wales and the UK as well. So it's a very adaptable context, a framework for different contexts. So just to finish up and hand over to everyone for the discussion this evening. Just having a little look very quickly, we're really interested also, if you're able to put into the chat, what brought you to this webinar this evening? What's your interest in this? And is it that it's featuring New Zealand educators and you're curious about New Zealand education? Is it that you're curious about this idea of expanding play beyond little pockets of the day, that you understand it's important? You might be curious about how to address some barriers or challenges to implementing play in your setting. We'd love to hear more from you about that. And particularly any barriers or challenges that you do experience as part of your role implementing play in your setting. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to moderate or lead some discussion, but I really want to hear from our panelists who are sitting there eagerly waiting. And I'm going to start by heading to one of our principals to start the discussion off. And this first part of the webinar, we're going to look at particularly leadership decisions and system level change, where we can go from these sort of pockets of innovation to whole school practice. Often, or certainly what's happened here in New Zealand when it comes to implementing play, is that it's actually been led mostly from ground up. It's been led from classroom teachers who are saying, we want to do something that we know is important for children, and we want to be able to do what we know is right for children, or principals that are trying little bits. And these principals have all had success at moving this through into a wider context across their schools. So I'd really love to maybe start with wondering about James. Can we start with you? What first of all prompted your school to prioritise play pedagogy, and what leadership shifts were required from you to move from those isolated pockets to sort of a shared whole school expectation?
So for us at Whakamaru School, when I started there 7 years ago, our junior section, they were playing with the idea of implementing play into their practice, and we found that there was a higher engagement in our students. And obviously our senior section, they were just your traditional classes. And I guess we did a lot of research around inquiry-based, all different types of inquiry-based for our senior side, and we went to a few of the Longworth conferences, and as our juniors were coming through, we found that they lost their creativeness and their intuition just to carry on with things. And so we made a big shift and decided that play wasn't just going to be an option. It was going to be who we are, and it was with the support of Longworth, and we decided that it was just going to be the way that we do our pedagogy and the way that we think, um, and we found a real positive movement of our students' um, engagement in their specific learning sessions, and also a real love for learning again.
So because
Yeah,
of the play, you had more focus in those more explicit instructional time.
so those explicit times with the teacher, which was around 20 minutes, our students were coming in, and it seems real, they would come in, be really focused because they knew if they got it, they could go out again into the play environment. But also we had teachers roaming in that play and I guess asking questions. You always talk about spray and walk away and try and keep the thinking going within their play, their investigation, their building, their whatever they're doing. I mean, you saw a whole lot of photos there that you had, Sarah, and it's basically our school as well. So yeah, and we just had a higher attendance rate. Our kids wanted to come to school. Yeah, it's just a real positive way, and I guess a natural way that we all learn, right? Through play, anyway.
Yeah, thank you. Marianne, can we come to you? What prompted you to shift, and also what were those leadership, requirements that you needed to be able to do?
Yes, so for our school, we're only a small school. There's 3 teachers and myself. So as James mentioned, our junior school was doing a lot of play-based, and we ended up finding ourselves in a situation where we had moved away from the creativity that children have and found that the teachers were teaching and it was being done to children. There wasn't the participation and engagement. And as James mentioned, the structure of sending children off to do an activity and then within 10 minutes stop and you move to a next activity. So it was stifling a lot of independence development. And so as a leader, I sat there and said, I've got frustrated teachers, I've got frustrated children. We're struggling to get through programs because we're dealing more with behaviour and non-engagement. And so we looked at the play throughout the whole school, because we also recognised that same change, that when they moved out of the junior school, the children were still wanting to be creative and innovative in their learning. And we were, again, as adults, stifling that by going to a more structured or traditional classroom. So as a leader, actually addressing that with the teachers and getting that voice from the children was really important. Finding out from the children what was their interests and building from their interests the play across the school. And it was fraught with some difficulties, the fear of not having control. So that was a big part of work that we did as adults, going, what if? What will happen? Having all of those adult questions, whereas the children didn't have that. It suddenly opened a world of exploration, innovation, discovery, creativity, and they didn't have any hesitation into moving into those spaces. But as adults, we tried to constrain that at times. So we had to work really hard, and I had to work hard also modelling that for the teachers, that it was okay to be to let that happen and then scaffold that learning across across the whole school.
Yeah, and I think that that's a really key part is the lack of trust we have sometimes in children to be able to lead their learning and engage in learning. And that's something that as educators, we have to unlearn as we move into this pedagogical approach. So yeah, I'm sure we'll come to that a bit more as we carry on through. Melanie, going from a small school for Marianne to a larger school for you, and you both share, I know, a love of beach school as well, that you've got a feature of beach school in both Aranui Primary and Lyell Bay. Can you share a bit more about your shift as well, Melanie?
A very similar story as the other two, although our new entrant teachers were sorry, I've just got a grandchild sitting here waiting to go to bed, were very strict. And when the new entrants came to school, our 5-year-old started at school, they found it quite scary to be there. So we looked at what could make it a bit more softer, the transition from early childcare to school to be easier for the children. So that was our initial idea. We went and did some work with Longworth, and all of the junior school went, all the year 0 to 2 teachers went to that. And so they all decided to pick up aspects of learning through play and play pedagogy in the classrooms. Once we did that with our new entrants, they were we've hardly ever had any tears anymore. They know what school's like. It's very similar to early education when they first come in. We try and make that transition really easy for them. And then the same thing, once those children moved on to the next years of learning, they wondered why they weren't in learning through play anymore and made to sit down and do all these other tasks. So we pushed it through the rest of the school. The rest of the school were really keen for that. And we also changed our graduation profile so that it's now called the beating heart of the learner, and it's about everything that we do. It's about communication, collaboration, creativity, and critical thinking. So those rolled all the way through our learning through play, through all of our learning. And it's much easier for the teachers to be able to access where learning through play is running. But yes, we have a beach about 500 metres down the road from our school. It's a little surf beach. We're right near Wellington Airport. And one of my DPs and I were talking about what else we can do because we love the idea of forest school. We don't have a forest near us, so we both went, beach school. So Joe, the DP, picked that up and ran with it, and spoke to some people from overseas, spoke to some forest school. We both ended up buying the same book and messaging each other, look at this book I found that might work. And she's like, I bought the same book. So we're very much on the same wavelength about that. And so she's developed a whole program around that. It started off with her taking 2 hubs of children with their teachers with them and going down and almost team teaching beach school at the beach. So just a whole lot of different invitations and provocations. She would read something to the children first, and then they would go down to the beach and she would take all photos and get in it. All the teachers would get in amongst it, come back to school with all the ideas that they've seen from the children there and develop them further in the classroom. It sounds simple. Sorry, carry on.
No. I'm laughing because I know it does sound simple, but I know very much it's not. And particularly in Lyell Bay as well, with weather being a challenge too, but also as a teacher, we often say teaching through play and using play as a pedagogical tool, whether it's in a classroom or on a beach, is the most complex way and the most skillful way that we are able to teach, and it really stretches us in our ability as teachers to do that. So to add the beach into that mix, Joe, I know, is pretty amazing at doing that. I'm going to come to Gareth just because I'm watching our time. Gareth, I know similar story for you as well. What's been the shift for you that's been most useful?
Really similar stories. And when I was there as a teacher, I always did things differently and I never really followed the script. So the natural thing for me when I became a principal was to bring that balance. So we looked at our the student engagement data and our well-being data, and we needed that balance because we're always a very typical, let's say, academic school. I put academics in inverted commas because there are many ways of being academic. We had this amazing environment, but unfortunately, our children were not allowed to go outside. In a beautiful blue sky day with a little bit of a drizzle, and they used to sit inside looking out the window, wondering what they could actually get up to outside. Well, we encouraged our teachers to get out there. We had to change a lot of mindsets about what, that learning outside is also learning. It depends what that your children are doing. We noticed what our little ones were doing, very similar to similar start as the others. It started off really well with our 5-year-olds, but then as our children got a little bit older, or let's say the 10-year-olds, if we just started off by saying just, there's some loose parts, there's some things to play with, our older ones would go, well, what must we do? Can we touch them? Are we allowed to hold these things? What they were waiting for someone to tell them what to do. So we knew we had a lot of work to do. So we looked at our learning dispositions or our habits of learning, of which curiosity is one and collaboration is another, and used those as a vehicle to drive the learning. And so that was our wondering, how could we find the balance? And 5 years later, I think we are finding the balance. We're still on the journey. It's a marathon and not a sprint, but there are a number of reasons. But that's probably the most valid one at the moment, as part of that discussion.
And I think that highlights a really key point too, that when, if you are finding yourself in a school that has been influenced a lot by more traditional methods of teaching and learning, that this is not an overnight shift. It's something that has to be really clearly planned for and worked on. And we say to schools 3 to 5 years to really turn the boat, to turn around and start to move in a different direction, because obviously you have things related to not only the children that are in the school, but teachers and teacher needs and their professional development needs and so on, and transitions of different teachers coming in and out of the school. You have your parent community or your society that the school sits within and what their beliefs and thoughts are around learning. So it's a very multifaceted way of making a change within a education system. And I know for all of the principals here, you've had varying aspects of that challenge throughout the process as well. I want to come to the next question that we have in our agenda, which is really around talking about the impact of play on learning, making learning visible. And I know that one of the questions that we get a lot, and something that's really topical at the moment around the world, is our children's literacy and numeracy development. I know in a post-COVID world, there is a concern that literacy and numeracy levels are declining globally in our children. We know the influence of technology is having a big impact on that as well, along with global events and things too. And often there's a misunderstanding that it's either learning through play or rigorous teaching of literacy and numeracy, rather than an and approach, that play and rigorous teaching of literacy and numeracy can live side by side. So what I want to do is I actually want to start with Anne, our classroom teacher here and team leader, because Anne's a wonderful teacher of literacy through play. And I want, Anne, perhaps if you could share your experiences of this and how you intentionally plan for literacy and numeracy while play is going on in your classroom.
Yep. So just to give you, excuse me, a little bit of context, I teach new entrants, which are 5-year-olds, and my team is largely 5 and 6-year-olds. So I'm talking about coming from that context when I'm talking, and play is done across our school too, but in different levels, and it moves into inquiry as they get older. But in my class particularly, the children, when they're not with me, doing some form of guided specific teaching, they are playing all day. Fitted around the other things you do like PE and swimming and all those kind of things, it fits around that. And as someone else alluded to, when we are doing guided teaching, if you've set your children up really well for play, they've got all those routines, expectations, guidelines, then you can actually, the learning that you do is extremely focused, high quality, and largely uninterrupted. So whatever we do is really high quality. So we know that play supports our children to practice and embed and stretch their academic learning. But to do that as a teacher, before you get into the you actually need to know your curriculum really well. And moving into play, actually, you have to learn your curriculum well. And that's a process over time. And also knowing the vocabulary and the skills for each level. So before you even get into planning for those kind of things, you need to have all this background. And we know over time that you build on those skills. And my team generally, in terms of planning for learning, excuse me, we do a structured approach to literacy. We do have a math program that we follow. We do all those kind of things. But as well as that, we use a back planning model, and this is our big picture planning in terms of curriculum coverage. So we have a document that we use that has all our curriculum areas in it, including literacy and numeracy, as you've mentioned. And we have this as an overview. It sits there in our daily planning, and it's something that we dip in and out of all the time. And because we're driven by the children, a lot of our time is spent observing what the children are doing, making notes, and storing away in your head, okay, I've just noticed so-and-so say this. I think I might want to follow up on that, or I've noticed an interest. And because we're back planning and not following the traditional unit or topic plan that you may well have done in the past, this gives us a lot of freedom. And when we are back planning, we're popping in the dates and times that we do things. And when you're doing that as a team over time, you get a really great view of what's covered and spot any gaps, any trends. And at our team meetings, we have really rich conversations about what could we do in a really organic or authentic way to maybe plug this little gap or give greater coverage to this area. And that works really well for our team. And also it's really good when you go to the following year and you've got children still in your team, you can go back and look at this and say, what have they already done? Because obviously as children start through a year, they miss out on all of those things that have been done prior to them starting. So that works really well. As Sarah alluded to as well, our play and literacy, they are really, that's our real strength in our school. And a big shared book plans that we have, we plan those collaboratively, and they're living documents. And they're great when you've got less experienced teachers coming in, people who need a bit of guidance on resources or where to. And obviously that's literacy, but maths is also in there too. We think any picture book you get, any big book, you can always pick a maths element in that. And it's knowing your language, even if it's something in the pictures, or it could be a couple of keywords, hooking into that, noticing that, thinking, how could I take that? And we pop all those things into a plan and people add to them. So that works really well for us. We also do specific on-site or off-site learning experiences where you've got a book ahead, and we do plan for those and look at the learning for those, but we really are driven by the children.
And I think what I love about your approach is that literacy is seen something that children embody. It's not something that separate from, and we're going to do our reading now or we're going to live and love literacy and explore it and feel it and listen to it and talk about it, and I think that's just the most beautiful strength that I can see from what you do.
And I also, with my team, we need to have cover the curriculum, we need to do all these things, but actually I want my team to actually have the autonomy and the confidence to actually go with things. If they see something can play, actually I'm going to park what I'm doing, I'm going to go with that. I might make a note in my planning, I'll come back to that, I'll cover that later, but actually we want to take it to the children and with the children and be driven by them.
And so one of the key practices that we use in a play pedagogy approach is the power of observation, right? So we talk about notice, recognize, respond. Those are the three key pillars of teacher practice in a play setting. And so what you're talking about there is spending time observing, watching, stepping back from being the one that drives it and letting the children drive it, and then watching and recognizing the curriculum that's coming out of what they're doing, and then planning to respond to that.
Yes, totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
What you mentioned about the observing, that's so important to actually give yourself time to do that. It's okay if you're standing there or just sort of stepping back and the principal walks past or a visitor walks past and they think, oh goodness, what are they up to? It's actually okay.
Yeah.
You're actually doing, you're setting yourself, the children up and yourself up for the next learning steps. You're making these important steps. We just need to not to be so hard on ourselves, give ourselves time to actually do.
Yeah, it's part of the assessment process, right? And as teachers, we assess. So observations and assessment process. Thank you, Anne. I'm just going to go a quick round through the principles to anything you'd like to add to that, either what you've seen your staff doing, what you've experienced yourself, not only in terms of literacy and numeracy, but generally the curriculum. And perhaps also in our previous discussion point, we talked a little bit, I think most of you touched on the dispositions, which are our learning dispositions like creativity, problem solving, innovation, critical thinking. And for those that are listening, those dispositions are now being more and more recognized as more valuable in some ways than content knowledge in a very fast changing world. So how can we make learning visible through observation, through dialogue, through documentation? How do you help your staff articulate that learning that's going on through play? Marianne, can I come to you first?
Yes, as Anne said, I think one of the key parts of the learning through play is teacher knowledge of the curriculum. And that was a big part of us to be able to support our learners of actually making sure we understood the curriculum, the language within the curriculum as well, so that when we're doing those observations or when we're seeing children doing things, we can provide open-ended questions to extend the children's learning and for us to have an extended knowledge of where that learning might carry through and introduce that to the children. It provides for really authentic learning. And what I found was, especially for things like literacy and numeracy, often now, instead of the teacher saying, we're going to do this particular structured literacy lesson, what the children are doing are coming from those play experiences, coming into the lesson and making the connections themselves. So it's making that authentic learning and that child-centered learning at the forefront of what you're doing, because you might have sat there and thought, oh, this is the way this is going to go. However, in the maths lesson, structured lesson, they might introduce, well, actually, when I was building or constructing, I actually made a pyramid and I actually, so they're linking those concepts of learning into what you're providing in the classroom.
And it's a transition to real life skills, right? Real life knowledge rather than something that's being taught in isolation, which I think is one of the key powers of play, is that we can practice something new that we've learned, practice it in a context that's familiar to us. Thank you. Gareth, can I come to you? Any comments on that?
Yeah, Marianne, it's definitely that shared language, and having your curriculum. Well, I don't know if we could have our curriculum on the wall because it'd probably take up all four walls and the ceiling at the moment and the floor. But if we could have certain parts of our curriculum or whatever they're working on, and the children are referring to the curriculum, we've got our year fives doing that with that, and that's quite exciting. And that came from Sue. Sue's visits to us in that so we are doing this yes, you're doing this, but what are we learning in the arts curriculum? Well, we're learning how to compose a musical piece, and this is what we've done, and this is how we've done it, and we can even present the musical piece to you and then get feedback on it. So that's that shared language of evidence collection. I mean, that can go on your Hero. For any of you who are watching, Hero is an digital platform that a lot of our schools use to capture those special moments with regard with video or sound or whatever the fact, or a picture. Or if it's a musical tune, you could record the tune and pop it on Hero, so the parents can see what they've been doing, but what was the learning behind that as well. And we had to make that really quite explicit to the parents, because when you start off with play, they get hung up on the word play, and our children are playing all day, but they're not learning. Even though, as Sarah had said, the play is the learning itself. So that curriculum can definitely shine through if you've got that shared language going. We're 5 years down the track, and we're still working so hard to get that shared language across the school. In the younger levels, it's coming on really well. We're our older children, our older teachers are also, yeah. As leaders, our role is to support the staff, confidently kind of articulate the the curriculum and then bring it across in a play sense that you can have fun, but you can also learn. So clarifying that very carefully to all our stakeholders, our board of trustees, who are hopefully behind all of us, and then our parents who want to know what they're learning. And if we refer to the P-BLOT tool, it's is it A6 and 7, where you have to communicate the learning through play to your community and to your children. And if you do have them up on the wall, let's say with a photo about little Johnny, it was learning how to measure Goldilocks to see whether the three bears are bigger or smaller than Goldilocks. There's a picture of little Johnny. That's what they were learning. It was in a play sense. They're learning measurement. We're learning how to measure in centimeters. Yeah, I'll stop there.
But I think you raise a really good point that I know has been something that's been topical for all of us in our various discussions over the years, is that part of what we need to be doing, not only in helping children understand that play is learning and play equals learning, and helping our teachers understand it, but we're also dealing with parents who have experienced a traditional model of learning mostly. And so when they hear their child come home every day and they ask them, what did you do? And they say, we played. Parents start to get a little worried that there's what's going on at that school if they're just playing all day. And so there is a responsibility on the school as part of shifting into that whole school pedagogical approach, is to help bring their parents on board as well and understand the rigor and the depth of learning that's going on, often in a way that we can't see if we don't know what we're looking for when children are playing. And so our job is to make that learning visible for all the stakeholders, for children, for teachers, for parents as well. So absolutely. James, Melanie, is there anything you'd like to add to Marianne and Gareth's points there?
I'll just quickly add. Basically, the observations are a huge part of the play-based pedagogy, but creating learning stories for our families to see where the learning is in play is vital as well. And for me, when you hear people talk about learning stories, they think it's like this huge journey, a huge journal of writing you need to do for it. But at our school, we've got an agreed way to plan one, and it's basically really, I guess, simple and specific. So it's not a huge workload for our staff, but it goes up onto our social media sites for our families to look at. And it's very brief, because what we want to try and encourage is, yes, you'll have parents say, what were you doing today? And they'll say, I was playing. And, oh, but we saw a learning story up on your site and it says that you did this, but it didn't really tell us anything. So it's about encouraging the discussion at home as well of what they've been learning at school. So that's one part of where we felt that our community are right behind the play pedagogy that we've been in for the last 6-7 years. So yeah, I thought I'd just add that.
Thank you.
It.
And I've just put into the chat. So we're using a couple of New Zealand terms here, and I'm just putting into the chat. We've had a question around what we mean by curriculum, the term curriculum, and also James, I've just put in the chat there what we mean by learning stories, and the narrative assessment approach that's used. For those with a research interest, it actually is what we would term ipsative assessment. So we have diagnostic, formative, summative. A narrative assessment is an ipsative form of assessment, which is assessing progress of the self rather than in comparison to something else or a benchmark or an age band. And it's just a lovely way that measures student progress as they naturally develop. So it's the primary function of assessment in a play environment.
So we link our learning stories, have just a real brief link to our learning urge, our school values, and then obviously the learning that's going on through our curriculum, the New Zealand curriculum, and then a brief, little 2-3 sentence description of what the students are doing, and then we try and look for something to, I guess, deepen that understanding. So for a lot of our students, they feel that there's a purpose for what they're doing. So if they're writing, a lot of our students, especially our boys, if there's any writing within that play, then they feel there's a purpose for it. And that's the biggest bit of learning that we've been able to deepen their understanding of writing for specific tasks as well. So
yeah, thank you. Melanie, anything to add to that topic before we move on?
Just a little bit around slightly older students and being able to connect with them. We have our teachers teach in hubs of 2 or 3, and sometimes that helps with the being able to keep up with the curriculum and the explicit learning that has to go on, as well as the learning through play. So one teacher will be in the play, and they'll be noticing and recording what's going on, and then the teachers will meet however many times that they need to meet and discuss what they need to be teaching that's going to link with the play. And then often the children will get a option of what they can learn about within which play area they were working on. So that's just a way that we cover all of that with the older children.
Yeah, and certainly there's multiple different ways that we can juggle the approach to observing and recording and reflecting and all those kinds of things, depending on the context that you're in. Often I'm working in different, particularly globally, I might be in a system where we're dealing with a teacher who's very isolated, maybe multi-level classrooms. So you've got, 5-year-olds through to 9 or 10-year-olds in the classroom, so different learning there. There's no one right way of doing this. It's about understanding the principles of play pedagogy and then applying it to the context so that you're able to give the children the best opportunity to drive their own learning and really grow those dispositions along with their technical skills like literacy and numeracy as well. So we'll come to sort of some contextual stuff very soon at the end. I wanted to just shift on now and lead into Sue, because one of the things that at Longworth we're really focused on is recognising that in order to shift teacher practice, there needs to be a lot of support for teachers and for schools to do this, and really to be able to lead change at a scale that we talk about. We have to really look at the capability of teachers. We have to look at it being a very collaborative, strengths-focused approach, and that change takes time, but also that change is sustained. We don't want it to be a sort of big hiss and a roar and that it all fall over. We want to be able to ultimately, for us as professional development providers, we want to be able to leave the school and it carry on for years without us there. So Sue is part of the team that's been involved in doing that. And so I guess really to share your experience of leading teacher change, implementing play, what's your observations, what's your experience been around helping teachers make these shifts in their practice?
So my experience really started when I got the opportunity as a deputy principal of a large school to support teachers to implement the play pedagogy in practice. And in that school, it was great because it became a whole school initiative. We started with a junior school, and then the senior school teachers got very interested and they wanted to join in as well and learn the play pedagogy. So to do that, I was able to support the teachers in implementing it by going into the classrooms. Actually, they were learning hubs. So there were 3 to 4 teachers in each of those hubs, which just brings me to the point that Melanie has made, how there is so much more shared learning that goes on amongst the teachers in that kind of environment. So initially I went into the hubs and observed teacher practice in a play-based environment. That was after I'd done the training with P-BLOT and Sarah, so that I had some knowledge of it myself. Those observations were then followed up by feedback conversations with the teachers together as a team. And the feedback was all based on the practices that we have guiding us in the P-BLOT tool. The feedback conversations then led to an action plan being developed with a goal, some actions as to how that goal might be achieved, and some criteria that would guide teachers to know they were achieving it or working towards it. So that action plan became the document for that team for the next 5 weeks. And then we repeated the cycle. I'd go back in and observe in relation to that goal. So just what they were working on. And then, another conversation and another action plan would be developed. So it was very collaborative, and everyone, felt some kind of responsibility to and ownership of the goal and the plan. Everyone learning together, so nobody had to feel like they were behind the 8 ball or anything like that. So the other point that I've really noticed tonight is Melanie and Gareth talking about we're 5 years down the track. James, we're 7 years down the track. Yes, this takes time. So I'm talking about that. What I just described to you was the first year. So then the next year it was like, okay, so now we need to start building some capability amongst the staff so that I'm not the only one doing the observing and running the feedback conversations. So I spent then 3 years working with the team leaders to deepen their knowledge, I guess, of the play pedagogy so that they could support the teachers in their teams. So we co-observed, we worked together to run the feedback conversations. So it was very much like, I did it, then they did it, we did it, then they did it. That kind of cycle of development and growth within the school. I was then, when I left the school, I would just go back and do some coaching. So that was around the practice-based coaching model, which we used. That's the observation, the feedback conversations, and the shared action plans. So that whole cycle of coaching. So I then supported the team leaders and the deputy principals to be able to be practice-based coaches themselves. Now, there's a lot of learning going on here. They're learning the play pedagogy and they're also learning practice-based coaching, and that's why it takes time. And they need someone alongside them for quite a while.
And just coming to that coaching model, because I think, one of the things that we all know is that we're in education. If we want to go and learn something new or apply a new skill or a concept, we often go off to a workshop, we listen to a webinar like we're doing now, we go to conferences. There's lots of amazing education conferences you can go to or attend online. The difference, though, for embedding practice over time comes down to being alongside teachers in the classroom, doesn't it?
Absolutely. There was a place for workshops, and that came from my observations where I could see gaps or frustrations in areas of knowledge or learning or development for the teachers. So we would hone in on that and have a workshop. But to do that workshop before they were experiencing that, it would have fallen flat and had no impact. So it's very much evolving as the need arose, I guess, and the gaps became obvious or the questions were asked. Another way that we built collective capability across the school was twice a term, the team leaders would meet with me and report on what their team were working on their goal, their progress towards their goal, and their practices that they were developing. So every team leader across the whole school knew what was going on everywhere. And it wasn't because I was telling them, it was because they were sharing it in a formal, a scheduled setting, let's say, twice a term. And I really believe that twice a term is just right. The old Goldilocks story, it's not too much, it's not too little, it really is just right for keeping that momentum, for identifying areas of need for growth and development and being able to jump in on them in a timely fashion. So yeah, twice a term worked really well. And it was really cool then to have the opportunity to work with Melanie and Gareth in their schools, because they too understood that they needed to build the capability within their school, because Sue was not going to be there forever. And Sue doesn't know it all anyway. So it was really great to be able to work in those two schools, to work with team leaders who had P-BLOT training, to support their own staff and their own teachers. So those schools continue to flourish, and I'm at home with my grandchildren.
Thank you, Sue. And I'm just going to put into the chat some information about the term practice-based coaching that Sue's just shared with you as well. And it's going to link to the Massey University Early Years Research Lab. The Massey University is a university here in New Zealand. It's my alumni. And the Early Years Research Lab, led by Tara McLaughlin, is a research lab that focuses in on the early years and best practice. But I'm going to link in to the page, what is practice-based coaching? It will give you a little bit more information there. It's a very well-researched way of supporting teacher practice change over time. And I'm also going to put in the chat an image to some seminal research around the difference between having professional development for teachers that's just focused on workshops and conferences and things like that, right through to what happens when we add the coaching and literally the shift we see in teacher practice over the time. So I'll pop that in the chat in a moment as well. Can I come to Gareth? Can you share a little bit about the needs of staff, what you've experienced in terms of how we help teachers shift in their confidence and their capabilities to implement play pedagogy more than just a little pocket in the day when everything else is done?
That is a very, very good question, and a lot of hard work, Sarah. How we shift mindsets is making sure, as I think someone said, making sure that they do know their curriculum really, really well, and not doing anything with regards to play, not anything, but not doing too much too soon. It's having those little conversation in the staff room. It's sharing little snippets of little readings and things. It's ongoing. I wouldn't say promotion, because you don't want to be that guy, but it's ongoing. Yeah, I would say a little bit of promotion around. How else could you have done that? Having a little conversation around, hey, come over here quickly and just have a look and see what conversation these two children are having. Because if you just stand a little bit closer and listen, you'll realize that the learning that's coming out of that is way more powerful than you sitting and talking at that one for half an hour. It is incidental, but it's also holding them accountable to what the vision of your school is. I have a board mandate. My board appreciates play pedagogy. They expect it to happen at our school. It wasn't always like that. Board of Trustees is our board of our school, for those of you who don't know. But making sure that at our school, we've changed things so that there is that balance, and this is what it looks like. We even have a framework for that, because along with education comes the P-BLOT tool, and the P-BLOT tool is a game changer, and in essence, it is effective teaching practice. It's the play-based learning observation tool. Even though that word play is in there, that is essential. When you look at the P-BLOT, it is teacher behavior, it's teacher practice, it's adequate noise levels in your classroom. It's making sure that the children are tidying up after they've played. It's not a free-for-all. It's the communication to your community. It's and then the new ones coming out that's geared towards Maori and our cultural aspect. It's saying this is a framework. This is why we're doing it. I want you to give it a go. It's okay if you fail. Just try. Just try and do something different. Try and put an invitation, something down, cover it up, lift the cover off and see what happens. Stand back and see what happens. And if your lesson turns to custard, and it probably will, that's okay. Giving them the green light to say, just give it a go. Yes, it totally goes against whatever you've learned in teacher training college with structured literacy and structured maths. We're going to bring the balance, have a go, and then there are other people who can help you, including myself. I think once they attempt and learning through play, and once they realize that it is so powerful, and you get such a lot more out of it than talking at children for an hour and doing teacher talk, and you're up on the stage as the teacher, they soon realize that they'll realize that it's really, really hard. It's difficult. You can't just sit at your your table and teach, or stand up in front and teach and deliver a lesson. It's hard work. You've got to be up and down. You've got to be checking in. You've got to be gifting language. You've got to make sure that it's not a free for all. Then you also got to be sitting down and watching, and just taking time to take a deep breath and watch what's going on. But once they realize how much they learn about their children and how much their children are learning, being guided with you alongside them, they'll never go back to the traditional model. So it's a lot of hard work. I remember Sarah saying it's the most difficult pedagogy for teachers to do, but once you see the reward that the children get out of it and that the parents get out of it, you won't go back to teacher talk. You won't go back to delivery, and it sounds easy to say that. It's easy to say that to some teachers. It's a lot of hard work and a lot of conversation and a lot of hang on a minute, no, hang on. It's a lot of talking to parents about what play is and what play isn't. So he told me he played all day, James. I heard James talk about it. He played all day. How was your day? Good. What did you do? Played. No, actually, let's ask them what they learned today, and then they'll tell you what they learned and how they learned it. So hard work,
Thank
but
you.
very beneficial, and it definitely pays off. We want children to come to school, even in the holidays. When I see children in the shopping centre and I go, hey, how are you? Kia ora means hello. How are you doing? How's mum and dad at home? How are your holidays? Boring. I want to come to school. It's music to my ears. Schools are supposed to be like that. Schools are supposed to be places you want to come to. They shouldn't be a school. They should be a place where you want to come to even in your holidays. That's my
Yeah,
gauge.
yeah,
I'll stop
awesome.
there. Yeah, I get a
Awesome.
bit passionate about that fact. Yeah, yeah,
Thank you.
that's all right.
James, we've been working with you for a long time and having this professional development model and the P-BLOT and the coaching. What have you seen in terms of how this has helped shift teacher capability and confidence?
I think just like Gareth said, it's, I think first of all, I think a lot of people thought that play was sort of a soft option, but in terms of play and the way that we've used you as a coach to help change the way that our teachers are thinking. It's actually a real high expectation for our students. It's a real high engagement and it's a high impact way of learning. And yes, it does take a lot of work. Like Gareth said, as a leader, you've got to really encourage your staff to um, just to try things. I mean, at the end of the day, we all got into teaching and learning to um, not follow, not always follow everything, but know your student and create an environment that they can learn in. And the play pedagogy is exactly that. Um, I've just seen from our staff from the beginning to now a real growth in confidence and a real love for teaching. And our students definitely have now a love for learning that was wavering. So it was. I mean, our whole way of thinking at our school is growing creative thinkers, and that basically comes about not just from the students but the teachers as well. But yeah,
I feel it's creating a culture of learning
yeah,
that is not. I know for all of you, there's this sort of the traditional way of teaching is the power sits with the adult, and the adult makes the decisions, and this is how you're going to teach, this is how you're going to learn, this is what you're going to learn, this is when you're going to learn it, right down to this is when you can leave the room, this is when you need to sit. There's just very little autonomy for children in that process. And certainly in your school, James, when I've been in there, the autonomy that children have, the choices that they can make, and the culture that you have in your school around valuing creativity, valuing student voice, all comes from this shared understanding that's come about through those collaborative conversations and the learning that's happened as a team.
Yeah, I mean, you don't throw away the, obviously it's not, we have our explicit sessions, and they really help, because obviously you don't know what you don't know. And so sometimes you've just got to learn, you've got to teach, and you've got to show. It's the same if I guess you throw a set of cards on the table and just leave them there and let the kids have a play. Sometimes you just have to show them, this is how you can play one type of game, and then from that they can create their own ones from it, because you've given them a start, like a lead into something. I just think, especially for a lot of our kids, they just need a reason. Like if you're learning something, you always want to know, why am I doing this? If there's some way of, or there's something that you've read or listened to or seen on TV, and you think, oh, I want to know a little bit more about that. If your child comes to school, or one of your students comes to school with that in mind, they've got time to be able to go and have a look and or like research, and you can show you can teach students how to research better, and there's all those sort of things that you can do. I just think there's in play. Yeah, it's not about. It's about giving our students a little bit more. I guess a passion for what they have, and it just, I think the learning sinks in more than having someone
Yeah,
at the front telling you exactly what it, this
yeah,
is what you need to learn.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah, and I know that that's something that is very well documented in the literature when we talk about children and agency and choice and the
yes,
impact on the depth of learning that we do when it's something that we're driving rather than being told this is what you have to learn. And that's I think that's I'm going to shift on to our next area just because I know that this probably leads into it quite nicely. We're talking about a New Zealand context, and there are some things that are unique to the New Zealand education system that will differ from other global settings, and certainly some of the people that are listening in this webinar. For example, in New Zealand, our schools are autonomous. So we don't, as a school, the principals that are here tonight have mostly the decision-making capabilities for their school. They don't work as part of a school district. They don't have a superintendent. They don't have someone coming in and saying, why aren't you doing this like this school down the road? And, there's an independence to schools here in New Zealand. We also traditionally in New Zealand have got a very playful way of looking at learning. Most recently, we've had some challenging policies here in New Zealand that have threatened that, and that's something that everyone in this webinar will be well aware of. But ultimately, we have in New Zealand a culture that values play and values childhood for children, and we're not immune to the threats that are impacting that in our modern childhood now, but that's certainly something that's a cultural thing. Thinking about play as a pedagogical tool in education systems that differ from New Zealand. I talked earlier on about adapting across contexts and taking the idea that maybe you aren't a principal or an educator that has a lot of autonomy compared to some of our New Zealand schools, but you're able to take some of the principles such as agency for children. How can we create more opportunities for our children to have more times to be agentic with their learning rather than being dictated to all the time? We also have choice, giving children more choice in their day, which grows agency. Another principle is getting kids outside. Learning doesn't happen just within the four walls of a classroom, and all of the educators here have children learning inside and outside throughout the school day, not just in break times, not just when everything, the formal learning's happened, but the outside environment has been seen to be as equally important as the inside environment. I've presented workshops in different countries where that presents challenges. I've had an educator say, but we've got a bear and her mama her cub that lives just down the road, or we're not going to put the kids outside right now. Fair enough. But working around that, how can you prioritize opportunities for children to be learning out in the natural world as much as inside the classroom? So there's lots of different things that are transferable to different contexts. Just coming to all of you now in sort of 5 minutes, is there anything, if I sort of said to you, what's one thing that you think, no matter where you are, no matter what context you might be in, that you would see as something you would want to really preserve in order for children to be learning through play? What would be that sort of, whether it's the promotion of a disposition, whether it's to do with supporting teachers to prioritize something in their day? What would you say is your number one thing that you would want to see in no matter where you were in the world teaching? Melanie, can I come to you?
Sure. I think it would be around the agency for the children, for them to be able to have more say in what they want to do. And that always leads into more playful experiences and invitations. So not the teacher's not in control of everything that happens in the classroom or the superintendent, but actually the children are.
Thank you. Yeah. Marianne, thoughts from you?
Yeah, I'm the same as Melanie. Them having that opportunity to share what their interests and what they're wanting to do is integral to, alongside with that, making the relationship strengthen between the learner and yourself as a teacher or leader. And from that positive relationship and having that value with the children, it just promotes learning and provides a lot more engagement, I think.
Yeah, thank you. Relationship important. James, anything from you?
Yeah, I'm really similar to everybody, but around the agency, giving our students a chance to have an opportunity to learn more. I think in for our school, um, a lot of our students go home and then they throw on a device to sit on, and that's sort of their babysitter. So for us, having sort of, I guess, flip the script a little bit and given our students opportunity to play outside, climb trees, build things with pallets. And I think that's one thing that I think is really important for our kids. They're getting outside and doing things and really becoming real creative. Um, yeah, showing a lot more initiative and being, intuitive about what they want to design or create or and I just think that sometimes balancing that online to physical learning and purposeful stuff, I think that's really important. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Sue and Anne, I'm going to come to you as well, just so that I'm giving you some heads up that I'm coming your way in a moment too with this. Marianne, have I asked you this? Yeah. So Gareth, can I come to you? What's your
two things, sorry. Love of learning. We have to work hard, but we play harder as well. Follow your passions. And if you don't like the word passions, then follow your interests, because that's what you're going to do one day anyway. And if you're an adult who hates their job, then you might as well not be on this earth, because it would be terrible going to work and hating your job. Love learning, follow your passions and interests, and fail. And don't be scared to make mistakes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, that was about 4 of them. Yeah.
No, that's fine. And I think that's really important because, ultimately one of the things that's constantly driven in the New Zealand curriculum, and it's lost a little bit at the moment, but we won't lose it forever, is creating lifelong learners. And I think that that's something that's, something that should be transferable no matter where we are in the world, is that our responsibility as educators is to ensure that our children leave our care still wanting to learn, still being curious, still being creative. And some traditional teaching methods have done their best to squeeze that out and to kill that. And so we want to be able to ensure that our children continue to want to learn because of their education experience, not in spite of it. So for you, what do you think is something that we need to be able to transfer no matter where we are in the world?
So we've all gone to putting the children first, which is fabulous. And I'm really going to agree with everyone that for me, it's about focusing on the children's interests, get to know your learners, know their interests, and build them from there, build them as experts, give them that opportunity to be experts in the classroom environment amongst their peers. And really, I started thinking about this when I saw the question come up on the chat from Nigeria, where the curriculum only starts for a 5-year-old. So what do we do with the pre-5s? Yeah, focus on their interests and their urges, which hasn't come up tonight, I've noticed. But those developmental drivers, I guess, knowing where the children are at.
Yeah, and the play urges are something that I'm, certainly in my work are not well known overseas. And so that's something that drives a lot of what we do here in New Zealand is understanding children developmentally and what their primary urges are in the way that they explore the world. So it's really important that we acknowledge that as well. But yes, you're right. And also, I think to that point, the question we had around the Nigerian curriculum, understanding that children don't arrive as empty vessels, whether they're 5, 3, 1. In fact, we know that the most amount of learning that we ever do in our lives is, before the age of 5, in terms of our brain growth and everything that we kind of take on and get ready to see the world. So our children arrive as very capable, confident little learners, and our job is to keep that going, not to extinguish it. Anne, just last comment from you before we take questions from people on the webinar.
I'd love our children to see themselves as really capable learners, no matter what they come to school with. I want them to move into lifelong learners and also have choice in how they express their learning. Not everyone wants to write it on a piece of paper. They might be able to show it or create something in a different way. I really want children to have agency and ownership of how they express their learning.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, wonderful. Thank you. So I guess, Jamie, this is the time where we just open up to some questions from those that have been listening in, and I've kind of kept a little bit of a track of questions on the chat, but is there anything that stood out to you that our panel can answer before we finish?
Yeah, I've just been in the chat. There's a question on, with a new and constantly changing curriculum in New Zealand, how have schools managed updating teacher knowledge while honoring play? We're finding it a bit of a juggle, especially as teachers may no longer hold a depth of curriculum knowledge.
And that's from wonderful Julia. Hello, Julia. So the question, everyone, is how are you supporting your teachers to keep updated with the curriculum? Which curriculum is the question we have at the moment in New Zealand? It's a bit of a fraught question. But in terms of our teachers, one of the things that we have here in New Zealand at the moment is a overemphasis on the English and maths curriculum. And we've seen historically around the world that when we focus on those particular areas, other areas such as the arts, the humanities, even some of the sciences, potentially the living world and the living sciences don't get so much of a look in. And as a result, our teachers lose capability in being able to see that and respond to that either traditionally or through play. So anyone got any thoughts there around how you're supporting your teachers to keep on top of that at the moment?
I can.
We'll go with Marianne first. Yeah, Marianne first.
Yeah, sorry. To be honest, we're sticking with what we know and the older curriculum that has the breadth of knowledge across all of the areas. So we're continuing to keep building our knowledge in that. And as the new revised curriculums come out, we're comparing what that is to what we already know and what we're using as that basis. And until such time that we've got that a surety that this is the new curriculum, we'll stick with the stuff that we know until we know better, really.
Yeah, I've just clarified for Julia that you're talking pre-2023.
Yes.
Yeah. Gareth or Melanie, anything to add to that? You were both hot off the gun there.
Sorry, trying to get the mute button. Pretty similar, Marianne. The way it's changed and the length of it and everything, it means that we need lots of time to get our heads around that. So we're going to stick with what we know. We're going to stick with Te Mataeaho, that had a much better balance. We're going to embrace the arts and the science and everything we can get out of our learning and out of our school, out of our environment. And we as I said, I have a board mandate, and as long as my children are happy learning and and lifelong learners, that's what we want. So no real changes. Is it Julia?
Mm,
Yeah.
yeah.
It is basically impossible to 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 do so much change in such a short time. It is humanly impossible. So we'll just take small steps at a time. I know that what we use Hero, so that the curriculum is on Hero. So what we often do is we often group certain learning, also learning tensions, a word, but certain groups of learnings together so that we can, as our curriculum. But we're just going to continue until apprehended, Parsi Solberg, 2023. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the other thing too that's quite useful to think about as well is from a coaching perspective, when you have someone coming in and supporting the building of capability, whether it's an external provider or you doing it internally, is highlighting, we're going to now watch for the arts. We're now going to watch for the sciences so that our teachers get multiple runs at opening the curriculum document and then observing and seeing what's going on and growing that capability. I think sometimes many of our teachers have not just either don't have the time or don't have the brain space to be able to actually look at that curriculum in the depth that's required for this pedagogical approach. So if they're struggling to do that, we make that a practice goal. And that is something that they're then held accountable for as part of their professional development and their growth as well. So I hope that answers that question. Jamie, did you have other ones that were available for our team?
Yeah, there was a question about for schools who have committed to playful learning for years now, have children also developed their ability over time to identify or articulate what they are learning as they play?
So are you noticing your children being more articulate about what they are learning as a result of play pedagogy? I suppose this will be for some of the schools that have been doing this, like James, I know I'm thinking of you guys.
Yeah, I would say yes, 100%. A lot of our senior students now are starting to actually write their own learning stories, and therefore making links to parts of the curriculum or parts of the subjects throughout. For instance, if they're cooking something, they know that they're learning about measurement and cooking, maybe even science when whatever they've cooked has risen just through temperature. So yes, I 100% think that through play and merging everything into one is giving our students a clearer understanding of where they are in their learning. I think that the challenge there is actually showing where they are in terms of where their growth in terms of sort of where they are in their year level and understanding where they are there. But they definitely are seeing and are using the curriculum document with the support of the teachers what they're learning within their play.
Yeah. Any other noticings from anyone else?
Very similar. Our older children write a 2-weekly reflection on what they've been learning and making those links through with the play. And the more we've done that, the more articulate they have got with their learning and be able to explain to their parents that they're not, even though they still say they're still playing all day, it comes out in their own learning stories that they're writing for themselves.
So that connection to the curriculum and articulating that really clearly, it also actually comes down to how the teacher makes that clear as well during learning, and the intentionality that a teacher has to articulate not your learning achievement objective 1.4c of the curriculum when you are balancing this tower, not in a very clinical way, but in a way that teachers are saying, wow, look, you're learning about balancing and structure and engineering here. And did you know that this is in the curriculum and I can show you, or, those kinds of things as part of that experience. Teachers are doing that very intentionally. Yeah.
And I think
They're coaching the students.
Is having our curriculum walls where they can see the links and the notice, recognise and respond on the wall, especially for the older ones.
Yeah. I hope that's answered that question. Jamie, any other ones? Got a quick question there about the role of AI playing in learning through play. Anyone want to tackle that one? What role do you think could play with AI in play-based learning? I think, personally, from my perspective, I'm excited and terrified, as most people are, of AI and its existence. But I think what it does represent is the need for us to ensure that our children have critical thinking, discernment, problem solving, and also develop the skills that make us uniquely human, so that we use and interact with AI as a tool to support our lives, not to rely on it in a way that takes away our autonomy and our uniqueness as humans. One of the things that we are seeing is, this rise in fake profiles, fake images, fake information. And if we are growing children who are able to be critical thinkers and discerning, then they're going to be able to identify and question information to check its validity or check image validity and so on at a very basic level. But AI also has got some wonderful opportunities to be able to help children grow and interact and develop skills that maybe were once limited in different ways. So there's lots of potential, but also if we have the balance of play and children being able to learn through play, then we can continue to foster those human skills that make us unique, and that can work alongside technology rather than be lost to it as well.
I think what you're saying, Sarah, is 100% AI is a tool to embrace, but also as a teacher, coach the validity of it. So of what the student is learning. I mean, you don't want them to go straight to AI, but if they do, coach them or teach them how to think, or how to prove that what AI is giving you is correct. Or there is some truth in what is coming from it. So I think you're right. I think it's a tool that obviously has come in, and that we personally, I think we need to embrace, but also to embrace it with some caution, if that makes sense.
Yeah, thank you. Jamie, any other questions? I'm just conscious of our time.
I think that's all that we have time for. Yeah.
So I'll hand back to you, Jamie, but just wanted to say thank you to everyone on the panel. It is our summer holiday break here. It's our big, long summer holidays in New Zealand, and these wonderful people have come in from their summer holiday, come in from the beach and the getaway to be here late in the evening here in New Zealand, sharing their stories. So I do really appreciate your time sharing your experiences and your thoughts with the 100 community. And we really hope that it's been a useful discussion for everyone who's participated this evening. So ngā mihi nui, and kia ora, and enjoy the rest of your day in the Northern Hemisphere, or your evening in the Southern Hemisphere.
Yes, thank you so much. And thank you, Sarah, for hosting and organizing this fantastic webinar. I'm sure that everyone has learned something new. And if anyone has missed anything, the recording will be sent and will be available on the event page. But that's kind of it, the end of the event. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.